Thank you for this nice introduction, Philip. It's really nice to be here at Creative Morning because you will see as part of my talk, I have a special relationship with Creative Morning. And I was kind of excited about the opportunity to speak. And then also when Philip told me like the main overall topic is RISE, but there's always an overarching topic for all the speakers that speak in all the different cities for Creative Morning. And the talk can relate to this main topic or not, but I thought I'd bring in a bit of RISE on my slides, so you will see it pop up here and there. The actual theme of my talk today is the future is closer than you think, and I kept it a little bit vague on purpose, so that I like it always when there's a talk and you don't immediately know everything that it's going to be about, so I hope you can already start guessing now. But I will start with a little introduction of myself. So my name is Cordula, as Philip said. I'm from Austria. For the people you that don't know much about Austria, it's a relatively small country next to Germany. If you're Capetonian, you know a lot of Germans probably. But the Austrians, we're like a small step sister of Germany. So we're like a small country. You don't meet them so much because we are a small country and we don't really leave our country often. We love it there. We have a really good quality of life. But one thing you will know about us, we're big on classical music. So a lot of famous composers like Mozart is from Austria. Then you will also know this guy, Arnold. He's one of our most favorite famous, whatever. When I went to the US, I always said I'm from Austria. So one of the first two things that they always said is either Sound of Music or Arnold. So that's usually what people know Austria for. And then my personal favorite here, that's our famous cake, Sacher cake. If you're in Austria, you have to try Sacher cake. That's my #1 recommendation. So now everyone knows a little bit about Austria. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. And maybe also some of the reasons why you're listening to me today in this talk. So I studied psychology, as Philip said, because I was particularly interested in human behavior and also in the work of another famous Austrian, Sigmund Freud. So I did that, and the whole of like my studies, I was already feeling that really, really loved psychology and understanding more of the human behavior, learning also with like the work that it entails, academic work, research work. But I was like already at that point missing a little bit of the creativity. And this will now come back to me in my like following career path that I took. I happened to be quite lucky that I could finance my studies doing modeling. So I was like the whole time when I was studying, at the same time kind of modeling, and that's, you can see like a picture of me when on an advertising there. And that's how I basically managed to postpone my studies, or I took them as long as I could possibly study, which is a privilege. But so that I then had to enter the workforce a little bit later. But I did eventually, and I started working as a clinical psychologist in a hospital. And there it came back to me once again. It was great work. I worked with patients. I got a lot of internal feelings of reward for it, but I was missing this kind of creative element in this job I'm doing. So, and on the very sideline of that all happening, the rise of social media. We were seeing like Facebook pop up, Instagram, and I was very interested in that and started on the side of my clinical work, also already worked with social media, had a few small gigs and clients, and already kind of thought this whole hospital setup and the whole clinical setup for me, it's not where I see myself working for the next 20 years. So for all of you also who might have sometimes considered is the job that you studied for, so the right one for you, this is maybe a reminder to yourself. It doesn't always end up to be the job that you studied, the one that you then actually work in. So I took a little detour, and my detour also brought me to South Africa. So in 2016, I moved from Austria all the way to South Africa, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about that later. But at that point, I also had a chance to kind of reform and restart my career, and I started working in marketing on the social media front. So that was bringing me exactly what was missing here earlier. I could kind of use my creativity. I could work on things, really using like also how fast time was changing, how social media was evolving, and that was really fun for me. And I was in Cape Town, so a lot of wins at the time. I was very, very happy to be here to experience a different country. And once in that kind of first year in Cape Town, I went to my first creative morning. So that was also part of my journey, being an expat in a new city, not having like a lot of people to fall back on. I went to a lot of events to meet people, to get a feeling for the city, and to engage, to interact. So hopefully also why you sometimes come to these kind of events. So I went here, I met Philip, maybe not at the first one, but I met a lot of cool speakers, a lot of cool people at Creative Morning. And I also later on started working pro bono on a project that is a skate park in Hot Bay. And I actually then was lucky enough to introduce that skate park at one of Creative Mornings. I wasn't the main speaker, but that was kind of like my first introduction also on this stage, talking a little bit about the skate park and the crowdfunding we did back then. And then as a last one, what also happened, I think consecutive, very short in my first year in Cape Town, I went to a first Future Females event. So that was a company that then I later on joined in the founding sequence. I think I went to this first or second event, and I was really taken by this mission that the company and the founders had, that was to really increase the number of female entrepreneurs and help them globally, and have events with it and have services with it, build a community around female founders. And that's what happened. So I was so intrigued that I joined the founding team at the time. So we were 5 people at the very beginning. And we really brought this company from just a few events in the beginning here in Cape Town to running events in 50 different cities around the world. So similar to Creative Morning. And having an online business school, we empowered entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs in a lot of emerging markets with the programs, with the events we were doing and the offerings we had. So even though I joined there, I was still working full-time on another job. So also that's maybe a good reminder for all of you who have a passion project. Sometimes your passion projects from the sideline become your main focus. And that can really be not so planned, but it just organically happens, because where you put your heart, it then sometimes also becomes your full-time employment. So at the time, I was making Future Females my full-time employment, working as the Europe director at the time. Comes an unexpected move, maybe not so unexpected, because I really loved Cape Town, but sometimes things happen differently than you thought. And I moved back to Europe because of love. So my South African fiance decided that it's better in Europe. So we kind of had a change there. And I moved to the Netherlands, beautiful country as well. Then just after moving there, COVID started, literally just after. I think I had 2 normal weeks in the Netherlands, COVID hit. It was an interesting year, that's for sure. A little later then, obviously kept on working, enjoying the new country, being back in Europe, Netherlands and so on. I also joined a company called Ghana. It's a venture capital investment fund that a friend of mine, very good friend, launched with a big, big mission to also really just help climate change and have portfolio companies in this fund that just help battle the effects of climate change, really. So I joined as an early investor, but also as a marketeer, working on the brand strategy and the social strategy of the fund. Again, one of my side projects. As you can see, there's a little bit of a red thread. I like having stuff on the side that I can work on, and also using my creativity just for something that I also believe has a purpose. Then, this is now my second year back in Europe. I decided that it was time for me for new career change, and I joined the Next Web as a marketing director. I really at that time had been with Future Females for almost 5 years, part-time, full-time, but it was time for me to move on and also experience something different. And I'd heard about the Next Web before, I've been to the conference before, so I was really, really excited to work for one of the big tech media houses there, and for one of the companies that also runs one of the big tech conferences in Europe. Then in June last year, we had the first tech conference where I was part of the team there. We have 10,000 people each year that come together in Amsterdam for the tech conference. So it's a really, really, really big event. And was also for me the first time working on such a big event. Even though we've done so many events with Future Females, this one was just next level. But now coming to the real reason why I can be here with you in Cape Town today. So in September last year, probably the biggest change in my life happened. Apart from all these career changes, moving continents, the biggest change that really happened and like changed everything for me was my daughter. So she was born in September. Now she didn't come out like that. She's a bit older now. This is a picture my dad took. She's now 5 months. And that's why I'm still on maternity leave now, and I can be here in Cape Town enjoying maternity. And that's why I can be here for Creative Morning. And I also wanted to share this because it does really, like people told me this before, but it does really change everything when you have kids. It changes your outlook on life, it changes how you behave, it changes how you think about the future. And that's a little bit what we will talk about today as well. But first I want to say again why I have such a special relationship on top of everything with Creative Morning. In preparation for this talk, I looked up all the Creative Mornings that I've been to, so you can do that on the website in your profile. And it was 33, so for anyone who wants to... 33. Very loyal Creative Morning goer. But for any one of you who have attended a few, maybe that's around the number if you ever want to speak, like you're 10, 10, 20, and then you become a speaker. For me, in my case, it worked. But it was also a very special one in 2017 that I attended with Philip. I don't think it was in this location, but not too far from here, with my now very good friend, Linda. You'll love that she's in this presentation. But she gave a talk, and I was so intrigued by her and by the talk that sitting there, I was like, okay, I'm going to befriend her. So I don't know if you've ever had that thought before, but I had it a few times in my life, and I befriended the people. So it kind of sometimes happens when you feel like there's an energy and vibe. So since this talk in 2017, we actually now hang out a lot still, and we both live back in the Netherlands, so that also works. But she had a really great talk about mental health back then, and we really like is another kind of sentiment to how Creative Mornings brings together people, can even form friendship, can be the start of something. So just wanted to thank Philip again. Now to the topic of today. The future is closer than you think. So I was since a few months I already knew I would talk here, so I was kind of running in my head, what could I talk about? Is it going to be marketing? Is it like just going to be, I need something that I find personally inspiring, so hopefully I can inspire you. And then two things came along my way and they kind of shaped this talk. So the first one was that around Christmas, I got an email from myself because 5 years ago I used a service called Future Me, and I sent my 5-year-old future me an email. So that website, I highly recommend it for you and do this exercise, is free, and you can send yourself an email and send it in any time, in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years from now, and it will pop into your mailbox. And you can share feelings, you can share predictions. What I found very, very interesting receiving mine, I wrote mine in a way where I predicted things. I was like, I think you will be back in Europe, da, da, da. And a lot of, like, I was crazy fascinated how much came through, like how much was actually happened since then. So that one got me thinking about future and how we think about future and how 5 years is still like relatively determinable span of time. Whether like 10 years and so on, I was like, what am I going to write to my 10-year-old future me? I don't know really. So that one got me thinking. And then the second one that I was thinking a lot about lately was in the podcast of my good friend Lisa. So they were discussing future there. And they read a book that's all about the future. She references a lot of studies in this book. And the main point that this whole book starts off with is that around all of our future thoughts, there's almost 80% are about the imminent future of the next 24 to 48 hours. So really our future thinking is very limited in the sense that everything is revolving around what do I eat, what do I drink, where do I go, who do I text, who's calling me, all these kind of questions. And I'm sure now when you think about what you did this morning, what you were thinking of in the car coming here and so on, maybe you can resonate. But it sounds really a lot. It sounds like we don't really think very much ahead. And it really got me thinking of how can we do this a little bit more, like better? How can we think more the other way? Because only 16% of our future thoughts are of the next year, and then even less, 6%, are around the next 10 to 15 years. So except a few people that work in predicting, that work in like futurists or trend analytics, we are not very good at thinking a lot about these very long ahead things. And one thing that is holding us back these days from thinking a lot of these 16 and 6% thoughts is our phones and social media. So I started to think, what can we do better? And one of the things that really came up in the book, but also if you do think to yourself a little bit about it, is when we are on social media and when we are on our phones a lot, we are very trapped in right now, and we're very bombarded with a lot of things. So we don't even start imagining and thinking and being more like broad and vast with our imagination. So what really helps for more future thinking, if you want that, if you want to be a bit more in the next year or in the next 10 and the next 15, is to give your imagination a bit more space. And that does sometimes mean to take the phone away, put the social media away, not get bombarded, have more space for you to really imagine things. That's what we really need for things that are 10 to 15 years in the future. So you might also say, oh, but aren't we supposed to be in the moment and not think all the time about the future? But the way I see it is more, if you have your if you're okay with thinking about your future and you have thoughts around that, you're feeling far more comfortable, and then you're okay to be in the moment because you don't worry too much about the future. So the other thing that kind of holds us back from thinking too far in the future is if it's somehow associated with fear. In the book, they said that our personal future we see more optimistic, but our society future we often see very pessimistic. So we almost don't want to think about it. So it does really help if you are an optimist. I mean, probably a lot of people know that. But if you optimistically thinking into the future, because it will allow you to not be afraid. And we know with a lot of things where we're afraid, we don't go, so we don't do it. And there was an interesting study that they had referenced in the book, and it was that people who have optimistic future thinking even live up to 15% longer. So there's really the power of like how you kind of control it and how you make it like a positive thinking when we do think about the future. So what I want to tell you now is a few instances, examples from my personal life where my future thinking has really given me great joy and also great results. And then hopefully I encourage some of you today. I know we also have a lot of students today, and I want to also encourage all of you to think a little bit further, but that comes at the end. So when I decided I wanted to move to Cape Town, I would say that definitely falls into the future thinking category. It's like if you decide for big change, like moving continent, you do need to think, okay, a year ahead, sometimes even 2 years ahead, how do I do that? So in my case, I left Cape Town after staying here for a while, and I went back, started working in a hospital again, and every day I was like, how can I go back to Cape Town? And then after a while, it kind of hit me, you have to move there probably. I mean, you can always go back for holiday, but it kind of then occurred to me, I really want to move. And at that point, as I said earlier, I was still in my psychology career. It meant that I had to find a job here, but at that I couldn't work as a psychologist because there was different laws for the two countries. So I had to start with the marketing, and I had to start from scratch as an intern. So when I first came to Cape Town, I interned at 28, which is I think late, with my career already in psychology. And I started there from like zero, working in social media at a travel company. And it also required, of course, to like sort out things like visa and sort out my financials and kind of like really make big decisions. So for me, it was one of the best decisions I've ever took coming here. And it really was, in retrospect, one where I was, for that time being, for being like a mid-20-year-old, thinking very much ahead. Like I wasn't so much, back then I was very much in the moment. And that one required a lot of future thinking, and it really, really paid off. This was one of the first pictures I took when I was back here in Cape Town working for that company. And we were shooting something, I think, I was on the rooftop of some place, I don't know. It's just that picture reminds me of how happy I was when I was here and when this move had happened. The other example from my work, where we work into the future a little bit more, where we think about the next year, 2, 3 years. So in marketing, there's performance marketing and there's brand marketing. So performance marketing is all about you see an immediate effect of what you do. So it's, for instance, you run some ads, you want the person to immediately click and buy so you can see your result. And then brand marketing is when you invest in your brand. So that's something that, for instance, Apple does, that Airbnb is doing. Like they create a big feeling-led campaign, and it makes you feel something, and the brand kind of associates great feelings for you. If you think about it, you've never seen a click to buy ad from Apple. Everything they do is like brand related. And so in my work as a marketeer, I also love working on brands because it's definitely on the more creative side. It allows you to go like a little bit deeper, to have storytelling, and to really like evoke an emotion. So with the company that I worked for, T&W, as I said, we do this big event once a year, the Big Tech Conference. And the way we approached it there was, let's for the first time come up with a proper theme that we also then underpin with certain things for this conference. So after a lot of thinking, we came up with Reclaim the Future. And we didn't just come up with this theme back then, we also had a manifesto that kind of explained what we mean with Reclaim the Future. You can read the manifesto yourself, but it was based around the idea that tech in 2023 had a lot of negative connotations as well. But there was a time, that was early on, where tech was very positive, where we all thought, oh, it's the new innovation, it's the move, the progress. And we wanted to evoke that feeling again of people like when they were excited 10, 15 years ago, first computer, first iPhone, that kind of feeling we were trying to express at the conference, but also in our campaign going into the conference. So once we had the manifesto, me and my team started working, brainstorming on what else we could do and what should be on our billboards. How could we like put up this theme and have this manifesto being represented? So my back then designer came up with this suggestion. He basically said, and he was like, what was happening in the time where everyone was still excited about tech? So people who are now like 30, 40, they will remember. I want to ask almost the students in the room if you still remember the left, but that's something that I still remember. It was the old paint. And of course a cassette, and then also this Rubik's Cube. This was the elements of that time where we we're kind of still excited when there came a new computer or there came a new game and something. So he came up with that. I really loved it. And we kind of combined it with this sentence to let's go back when the future excited us. This was kind of the underpinning of our manifesto and of our theme. And as you can see, the conference is really small. We're not saying like buy a ticket. This is brand marketing. We're telling a story. So all these were everywhere. We also designed the sticker, which is the old layout. Some of you will recognize this from your old computers. So we designed these stickers that went everywhere. And then everywhere in Amsterdam and other cities, we had our billboards, we had our stickers, and people were curious. You know, if you don't see the T&W conference immediately, there was always a QR code at the bottom you could scan. And this was kind of the campaign we ran as a brand campaign. So also one where we're thinking more into the 1 year, 2 year, 3 year scope and not immediately selling a ticket. So this was one where I used the kind of future thinking in my work. So now I want to take you all a bit further. We saw that we only 6% of the future thoughts very much ahead. And I know we have some students here, but I thought if we're somehow all between 20 to 35 or so, then this is maybe a good exercise. But I would want you, if you're over 50, then in this case, I would go further. So like maybe 10 years ahead, 15 years ahead of what you are now. But to close your eyes and imagine your 50-year-old self. And if you are 50, then to imagine your 70-year-old self. Okay. So I just wanted this exercise to for you to be thinking about how you would feel, where you would be, how you would look, how you would feel in your body, who you would be with, to give you this like extra push to do it sometimes. Because I remember myself, and nowadays I'm 37, I do it more often, thinking ahead. But before I was 30, I never thought anywhere like over 45, I would say. It didn't happen, didn't occur to me. And it is important that we do this from time to time, not just for our sake. There's another interesting quote that always comes up, and it's like that with time, we overestimate what we can achieve in a year, but we underestimate what we can do in 10 years. So I know 50 sometimes is now too far, but I really want to encourage you also think the 10-year mark, and all the students today, you're starting your studies now, is like, where are you in 10 years? Sometimes, I know it's sometimes daunting to think that far, but to think, where do you want to be in 10 years? And is what you're studying now obviously is on that trajectory there, or how you're spending your time. And then another big reason why we all need to think a bit more like that is because of the planet and because of all these things that are currently happening, where we sometimes feel like we don't have an input or we can't change something by ourselves. But so we decide to not even think about it at all because it scares us, because it's maybe 50 years ahead and we think, okay, we're not even going to be around anymore in 50 years. But it is really, really important to sometimes think about the bigger future and not just leave it up to a few people like Elon to think further and further ahead. We also all have this planet, and if you're planning to have children, this is something that changed for me personally, then you also need to think about what kind of planet they will live on if they are your age now. So with that, my fiance said, oh, why don't you call your talk "The Future is Now," make it like very, very South African. So I thought I'd leave you with kind of that at the end, and with kind of the encouragement to talk more about it. And the next time when you're asking someone, what are your plans for the weekend, maybe think about it and rephrase the question, be like, so what are you doing next year in summer? Or what do you think about this future scenario? What do you think we will all look like in 10 years from now here in Cape Town? Do you think we will already have this and this technology? Anything that really interests you around it, but above and beyond the weekend, basically. So with that, I will leave you, and you can also feel free to connect with me. I write a bi-weekly newsletter now because I really also enjoy writing. So if you want to read more about any of the stuff that I read or listen to that I find on the internet, like the future me, then I invite you to subscribe to it. Then you can get something from me every 2 weeks. It's very, very short and comprehended. It always has something with marketing in it. So for the ones of you who study to be in advertising or marketing. And yeah, I'll leave you with that.